This is the 5th edition of the Traveller RPG, a science fiction tabletop role-playing game published by Far Future Enterprises. This is the 5th edition that has been, I suppose, directly designed by Mark Miller himself, the founder and a member of the original Game Developers Workshop team that developed Traveller, along with Lauren Wiseman, Richard Banner, and Frank Chadwick. I bought this, specifically this edition, even though there are many available and likely they're all fun and interesting, for two reasons primarily. One, this is the retro sci-fi style. I say retro, really, it's the simplest and most appealing design to my eye, and because it is the work of the auteur, Mark Miller. To me, this product, this publication, this what do you call a series of texts, is a small encyclopedia, is evidence of an individual's determination, no doubt in conjunction with many collaborators, to see through a vision of what a science fiction tabletop role-playing game should be. And to me, that is a very impressive concept. So, although there are other editions and they look really fun as well and very interesting and are possibly more popular, I bought this because I was most curious about what one individual's vision could be developed into. And I don't mean to dismiss the obvious large numbers of people who collaborated on this, who contributed designs and worked on this. Every effort is a group effort, and a sophisticated printing and publishing work like this must have had, let's be honest, thousands of people across supply chain and design pipelines, and thousands of people worked on this. In a lot of ways, this is sort of a milestone of the human species' current capacity for producing not just tabletop role-playing games, but works of this in this medium. And yet, this is the one that I got because of its notoriety for its sort of idiomatic complexity, or its complex idiomaticity. I'm not sure. At any rate, why don't we have a look? I would like to learn how to play this game and play it not only with others, but in a solo capacity for storytelling, and to use this as to flesh out stories that I write and play through on my own. But to do that, I will have to learn how to play it. And so this is not the first tabletop role-playing game that I have learned. I've played Dungeons and Dragons. I've played Modiphius's Star Trek Adventures. I've learned the Genesis engine behind Star Wars, Force and Destiny, and the Fantasy Flight games. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition was not the first game that I learned. I learned 3rd edition before that. I've learned about Fudge and World of Darkness and Shadowrun, and maybe a few others, a few less crunchy ones. So this is not the first time that I've learned a role-playing game. So let's see if I've learned anything about learning a new tabletop role-playing game. Right here we have a reference table. This is the UPP of Universal Personality Profile. It's a handy shorthand for NPCs and characters' basic characteristics, so that a string like this, and I suppose this is an example, 9AB567, can be written very tersely in the game master or referee's binder or notes sheet in order to be referenced in quickly and packaged densely. So it's handy that it's right here on the inside front cover. These are the list of characteristics, which I'm certain, this is a nice reference, but I'm certain that the characteristics themselves will have a full chapter right here. Characters, the personal day. Characteristics, C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and S, pages 54 and 55. But here we have a handy reference for them, already exhibiting what I referred to earlier as idiomatic, or perhaps idiosyncratic complexity of the 5th edition of Traveller specifically. You'll see we have character 1, strength or physical power, is quite traditional in a tabletop role-playing game as a characteristic, since most role-playing games take place in physical space most of the time, which requires some interaction, and it's therefore useful to quantify an individual character's capacity for physical interaction. But immediately following are characteristics 2, 2, and 2. These are optional or interchangeable or interoperable characteristics that one character might have, but another might not. So, for example, C's 2, 2, and 2 include dexterity, agility, and grace, all of which are closely related, but a character may have agility, but not grace. If, for example, it were some kind of spring-loaded cyborg, it might be inappropriate to call it grace. I don't know exactly what this means. We're just looking at a reference table in the front, and I'm just riffing on what blog posts I've read about this edition from before I read it. This is the kind of design that I am eager to chew through. This focused design. Traveller. Noun. Origin. Circa 1300. Common era. From the Middle English travailleur, the treader of a path, emphasizing labor or toil, as in to make a difficult journey. One who travels, or who has traveled, or who will travel, as to distant places. An adventurer. Or 3, the game of science fiction adventures in the far future. And then here, an in-world dictionary entry. Derabelur. Some alien alphabet. Noun. Origin circa 2200 Imperial. Loanword from the Anglic, but with connotations of distance, because of its similarity to the Villani, Rabelar, far away, one who goes far away or has gone far away and returned. 2, a rogue. 3, a popular Terran role-playing game transplanted to the worlds of the First Imperium. So, in what universe is this book speaking? From what universe is the narrator speaking to us? Core book 1, characters and combat. This is already a formidable tome at 270 odd pages, but it's only one of 3, including starships, worlds, and adventures. I think, because they're ordered, we may as well stick to the order that they're in for now. But as I get ideas, I think I may skip around. Characters and combat. Travel without companions is a truly unsatisfying endeavor. To my life's companion, Darlene. Okay. These are the tables of contents of the other books including this book. And these are the charts. These are where the charts are listed. Characteristics are explained on page 47, as well as charted on page 54. A brief history of the universe is on the next. It's coming up soon. Traveller is a role-playing game. Simply put, players assume roles as characters in the universe of the far future. I'm not surprised to hear that. Because, as I mentioned before, I've learned and played many varieties of role-playing games. How to play. Here are some examples of players describing what their characters choose to do. I'm checking sensors. Do they pick up anything? Scanners? Communications? The referee then responds with information. The ship is bullet-shaped with large fins. Your sensors tell you very little. There is nothing on the communications wavelengths, etc. A paragraph about resolution through discussion. Resolution with dice. An alternative to discussion. Very interesting that resolution through discussion comes first and is possibly what the authors consider the primary mode of resolution. What is the roll of the dice they're going to use? Which way is the bridge? Use the laser. I start to cut the blast door. They discuss within the rules framework how hard this event will be, how much skill and ability will be needed, and several other details. A radical departure from the what I consider to be default mode of referees maintaining a total monopoly on how hard a particular event will be, the difficulty of a task. But in this game of Traveller, I think there's a presumption of determination or determinism, which is to say that there should be less referee fiat and more of a logical conclusion based on the rules. But perhaps one which can be arrived at via consensus. After all, who would consider it fun to sit down with their friends and be the only reference, the only person who had read the book and could adjudicate? What a burden. That is kind of a joke, because typically when playing games of any kind, one of the players is grossly more enthusiastic, in my experience, than the others. And so there's always an imbalance. And it's still fun, typically. Role-playing isn't a competition. First step for every player is to create a character, mostly human, but some may be intelligent aliens. We call them sophonts, which is another of the unique idiosyncrasies of the 5th edition of Traveller, is the rule set for sophonts or sophonts, a neologism from this text, if I'm not mistaken. And therefore, I think it's forgivable if I struggle to pronounce this word, which I had forgotten would be in here. I think I had remembered it as something like sapience as opposed to mere sentience. But sophonts, sophistry, sophonts, sophonts, sofa, sophonts. I like the design. I love sophonts in particular. Much but not all of Traveller is solitaire. The creation and description of worlds and starships and devices and objects. The definition of histories and backgrounds and cultures. For example, there is a process for designing starships. The player must decide for themselves the details of the ship appropriate for its mission. Another process describes both random and deliberate creation of planets. The referee details worlds that will be encountered. So there are processes, solitaire processes for generating the content of a unique Traveller campaign. Brief history of the universe. Here is our galaxy. This dot is charted space. Our galaxy. Milky Way galaxy. Dakhazari. The barred spiral galaxy that is home to humanity and thousands of other alien intelligent species. In size, some 30 kiloparsecs in diameter and 300 parsecs thick at its center. 30 kiloparsecs by 300 parsecs. Wow. A thin disk. So, this is an alternate history of our universe, including ancient influences by sophonts that either do not exist or that we do not know about in our world, but are very real in the world of Traveller. Here, briefly, is the timeline from the era of grandfather's children to the far, far future. I suspect what will most be played are those eras involving Terrans or the Imperial factions, such as the rule of man. I don't know. I haven't read through this yet. but it's good to know that there is such history. The foundations of the Traveller universe. These are the perhaps literary foundations. The narrative aspects which govern its narrative laws and content, including the jump drive, communication limited to transportation speed, a spectrum of available technology, gravity manipulation, including artificial gravity built into the deck plates of starships, fusion power, artificial people as a natural consequence of high technology, and a little bit of the social sciences. Primarily a human-dominated universe, which I think will make it more palatable to certain more mainstream audiences who don't go in for too remote a protagonist. Oh, here you go. A nice bit of deliberate distancing from that franchise which involves the prime directive. Most interstellar governments encourage development, especially economic development. Governments rarely impose prime directives. This is not the post-scarcity space socialism of Star Trek. Traveller is very much a lean, mean, gritty, and capitalistic, market-driven universe. I believe, is my understanding. And in fact, if we go and take a look at the Starships book, I don't doubt that we will find some notion of cost. Adventure class ships, page 30, adventure class ships. Well, I would expect that if we were to arbitrarily pick hull tons and costs, let's hop over there to page 70. We will see that tonnage costs some number of mega credits, which are what is it, mega? Is that 100,000? I'll have to brush up. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. So there's really no... There's really an emphasis on the nitty-gritty financial aspects. This is not so optimistic a science fiction premise as others. Duty, honor, and loyalty are apparently an integral component. Almost a Randian notion of natural nobility arising from leaders who faithfully innovate and follow the orders of their superiors. Not all that different from how our society is said to operate. Wheels within wheels, events, ideas, concepts, and beliefs are shaped by environments, but they are also shaped by the thinkers themselves. As thinkers, readers, players, or viewers learn and mature, they begin to find new insights into their beliefs. I wonder why thinkers are so broad at the category of subject referred to here. Fascinating. I wonder if this principle will ever be fully revealed to me. Rich decision-making environment is a good principle to be driven by. Certainly, in a board game, one has fewer options than in a role-playing game. Casual players, however, are to be accommodated. Casual players can be so casual that they know nothing about the game system at all, leaving it to the referee to handle the details. Or detailed role players, providing dedicated gamers the opportunity to roleplay complex characters. Systems engineers are a type of player that can be accommodated, possibly exclusively the referee, possibly players playing characters as well. Traveller uses dice. I have some dice. It appears that 10 six-sided die are necessary, as well as 2 contrasting die. I have what I believe are thematically appropriate black and gold die. These I can use for the standard dice rolls. These will form a pool, as well as 2 other spares that I have, a light and dark. DM, die mod, die modifier, dice modifier, a change to the die roll. So with a DM of 2, 5 and 2 becomes not 7, but 9. The target number, or just target, is the number the player is trying to roll, and may itself have a mod or a modifier. A check assumes the 2 dice. A check is assumed to be 2D, unless otherwise stated. Now, what is a success? That's what I would like to know. Dice instructions. D, roll 1 die. 2D, roll 2 dice. Results 2 to 12. 2D minus 2, plus 2, minus 7, D minus D, roll 1, then take the other. Flux, roll 1 die, then a second die, and subtract it from the first. And always subtract light from dark. 5. Good flux. Subtract the smaller from the larger. 5. Bad flux. Subtract the larger from the smaller. -5. Now, the typical Traveller usage is roll low. Situations are defined as a target which the player wants to roll less than. So if, for example, our target were 8, and we had a dice modifier of 1, is that a +1? Let's say we have no dice modifiers. With a target of 8, we would have failed to roll less. We would not have made the check. Mod changes the target number and makes it easier to roll. Mod +3. So, for example, if you're attempting to make a jump, if you are attempting to, physically leap with your own 2 feet onto a ledge, perhaps in a lower gravity situation, you might say you might modify the target number by 3 to make it higher. Then an 8 might become a 9, 10, 11, which a roll of 8 on the dice would successfully slide under. Negative dice modifiers are beneficial rather than target modifiers. So I wonder if improved characteristics lower one's dice modifiers, or if in fact they change the target numbers. That would be counter to the state of my current intuitions. Mods can be applied to a target number before the dice are rolled. Applying DMs. Applying die mods to the dice and then comparing with the target number is a longer process. Some players prefer to convert dice modifiers to target modifiers, or DMs to mods, creating a final target number before rolling the dice. Conversion is simple, and then one merely compares one's dice roll against a target. It's simple math. If a roll fails, some players may then argue that a particular mod or dice mod was available and unused. The referee can and should allow revisions for reasonable mods and dice mods after an unsuccessful roll. However, there is no point in reaching back several situations to revise rolls. This is abstract enough that I still don't know when typically one applies modifiers to either side of the equation. For example, Don is suddenly confronted with a large beast blocking his way back to his ship. He needs to distract it. He has a backpack he can throw to one side and a digital camera with a flash. The referee says you need to distract the beast. If you trigger the flash, your target is 7 on 2D. If you throw the pack at the same time, mod +2. If you can time either action with a gust of wind, DM -1. Let's break that down. If you trigger the flash, your target is 7 on 2D. Easy. If you throw the pack at the same time, mod +2, which is to say one would appear to be less proficient. Sorry, that is a mod, which is to say that throwing the pack at the same time as triggering the flash is a more complex action, a more difficult action than merely triggering the flash alone. And that waiting for a gust of wind improves one's own ability. Perhaps because it catches the backpack or introduces noise. Okay, so the conversion approach there would be to equal out the +2 and the -1 to have a target of 8, and then just roll 2 dice against that. I'm sorry, 10. And mod +2 makes the target 9. DM -1 is the equivalent of mod +1, which makes the target 10. Then rolling 2 dice against 10 results in a success or a failure. Money. Credits, mega credits. 1 mega credit is roughly the value of 1 day of operations by an average business corporation. So perhaps it is not a hard multiple of the credit. The credit is roughly the value of a short period of unskilled labor, a 10th hour of unskilled labor. The Frontier Trader's Ramp. When a trader lands on a frontier world, he can try to barter with the natives using the well-established ramp market technique. The trader lays out goods he wants to trade, textiles, trinkets, tools, small devices, or other goods he feels will be attractive to the natives, who, in response, lay out goods that they think may be attractive to the trader. Each side positions its goods across from goods they want. When each side is satisfied with what the other has to offer, they nod, slap the ground, or otherwise signal acceptance, assuming they do not speak the same language, and the participants gather up their newly acquired goods. That seems like a broadly applicable interaction, not entirely unlike the trading UI on many multiplayer online computer role-playing games. There are races of humanity which are, I believe, real variants after hundreds of thousands of years of separation on different planets, but which may be derived or rederived or replaced with the sophont rules. Here we have the expanded hex code, which substitutes single letters for numbers above 9, as is typical of hexadecimal or base 16 number systems, omitting the letters I and O to avoid confusion with 1 and 0. The expanded hex code allows representation of values through 33 using single letters. Oh, I see. It is not strictly hexadecimal. Well, here, what we have is a concise syntax for abilities or values for people, equipment, starships, and other items. Numerical values. I'm reading now. The situation, the problem, and the solution make each value 1 digit. Assign letters so as to avoid having to separate digits. It's much more concise. This is perfectly reasonable, and they go through the trouble of justifying it. Will we see some examples? Perhaps soon. Standard units of volume are the ton, maritime, starship, and subunits of the ton. Perhaps when giving a decimal ton volume is inartful. You have your standard cargo pod, which is 3 meters wide by 3 meters high by 4.5 meters long. And shown for scale comparison, a human person volume, a half LAN person. I feel as though I may have missed the definition of a LAN. A half LAN person. A 100th ton LAN is a cube. A human person volume is a half LAN. A LAN is 135 liters. A LAN is a subunit of the ton, a 100th ton. We're not using strictly metric. A kiloliter is 0.074 tons. A ton is 14,000 liters. That was the legacy ton. The standard ton is 13,500 liters. Not a particularly round metric unit. However, we can continue to use liters if we are so inclined. Distance and range bands. Coin, eye, head, rifle, person, vehicle, ACS, BCS, these must be class ships. Moonlet, range, short, medium, long, distant, orbit, far, orbit. What is the significance of these icons? A thing with size equal to range appears approximately the same size as any other thing with size equal to range. For example, a size 6 vehicle at range 6 appears roughly the same size as a size 5 person at range 5, a size 1 coin at range 1, or a size 9 moonlet in far orbit. Fascinating. This is a set of rules governing, or rather, this is a set of heuristics facilitating description of objects at exoplanetary ranges and sizes. World surface ranges 0.5,000 kilometers. Contact, reading, talking, very short, medium, short, shouting distance, pistol shot, city block, rifle shot, 150 meters for a rifle shot, 50 meters for a shouting distance, 5 meters for a lecture, 1.5 meters for a conversation, 0.5 meter for normal reading. In fact, this book is about 0.5 meter from the lens through which you are looking. Distance is an open-ended concept of separation between objects. It governs the effectiveness of the senses and of sensors, of weapons, attacks, and communications. It determines travel time. We have two distinct range types, world surface and space ranges. They are convertible. Space range equals surface range minus 5. range equals surface space range B converts to range 5. Space range B. I can't say that I noticed when space range B was discussed, but I do see here, it's this column, this last column of the world surface ranges from R0 to 8 and space ranges from B to 4, where space range B of 3 kilometers from 750 meters to 3 kilometers converts to world surface range of 1 kilometer, where surface range 6 near the horizon, the furthest one can see on, well, an Earth-sized and shaped planet, I presume, is space range 1, about which I have no intuition. B, space range B, is the boarding range. It occupies the gap between space range 1 and 0, and includes 0. It is the range between ships at which boarding can be attempted. Something to consider. Range band charts. The range band charts and subcharts show a variety of range R equals distances on world surfaces, atmospheric altitudes, and ocean depths. 1A, world surface ranges, address the typical distances of relatively flat terrain. They reflect combat ranges and typical uses of senses. 1A, world surface ranges. 1A, world surface ranges from R13 through R9, or far orbit, down to talking, reading, and contact. 1B, altitudes of atmosphere, address the typical altitudes used by flyers, air traffic control concepts, various orbits, and typically encountered layers of atmospheres. What are referred to as uppers 8642 and upper prime, perhaps, mids 8642 and prime, and airspaces 5, 4, and 3. The immediately I misunderstood. I began to look at table 1, chart 1C, depths of the ocean, which I had not yet considered, but this goes from tsunami at range 2 down to through wading and fording, through the thermocline and shelf, past lake bottoms, to the abyss, and down to the planet core. These are all the same scale, but the different tables indicate what is available. So we can go from talking distance at eye level and wave height to what is considered medium, airspace 3, just above the height of a tsunami. I believe medium was a city block or rifle shot at a 0 point of 150 meters, or a range band of 100 to 300 meters, which is airspace 3, which seems to me to suggest that it's not inconceivable to shoot at low-flying aircraft in this game. Space ranges involve much larger distances. Going from, what is this, 5 million kilometers down to 1 kilometer, or B, boarding, or R5, or airspace 5, altitude. Passing through fighter combat ranges. The diameter rules. 1000D, maneuver drives inefficient beyond this limit. 100D, jump drives will not operate within this limit. 10D, gravitic drives inefficient beyond this limit. And 1D, lifters inefficient beyond this limit. So here we have the ranges from deep space to the outer system. Where one would typically decide, where one might decide between jump drives and maneuver drives. Gas giants have atmospheres ranging from cloud to clear hydrogen. Unless they are ice giants, or storm worlds, or infernos. What makes a strange world? What is a strange world? Here we are now, entering a nebula of charts and tables. Here, 10D, gravitic drive limit of 1A, B, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and D, and an A. A's 0 and 5, F's 0 and 5. I could not tell you at this juncture when or how this table would be applied. As though G drives are inoperable outside this orbit. Asterisk is inside orbit 0. Blank is not possible. a 0. Well, let's just remember that our drive limit tables are here on page 31, and when that comes up, we will come back and reference them. The habitable zones reference, I believe, orbits around certain types of star. Here, AU is, what is that? Astral units? Is it the size of a star as a multiple of hours? At an astral unit of 1, light is 8 IM, LM. Light minutes. 8 light minutes. Or tera. Which I suppose is a reference to the very real fact that it takes light 8 minutes to reach Terra, our planet, Earth, in our universe, after it leaves the surface of our star. And 10 light hours to reach the Kuiper belt, or the Oort cloud. 32 light weeks to reach its interior edge, and 1 light year to reach, 1 year to reach the distance of 1 light year, the outer edge of the Oort cloud. Which leads me to believe that the AU perhaps is not a unit of size of stars, but of distances from a star. Thus, Earth's AU is 1, our reference point. Mars, likewise, is 1.6 times the distance from the sun that we are. And habitable zones inhabit a band from at class 5 G type. What I would expect this to mean is that for a, this would be the inner system, for a class 5 type star, that a G class planet could occupy 1 AU, and that therefore Terra is a G class planet, and that therefore there are classes of planet. But what I don't know is travel distances and times, fame, risk, danger, and threats. Fame measures notoriety or reputation. It is the degree of recognition or respect which society holds for an individual. And I believe. That G, O, A, B, C, locked to the primary. Satellite orbit radius varies with the gas giant or planet. Yes, these are distance and range tables, attributes of planets, as well as the probability, severity, and imminence of danger on a planet. If we have a very probable, very severe risk of devastation may occur between minutes and seconds away from encountering such an environment. F. This is the distance. This is a scale of fame, risk, and danger. One person is the knowledge, the awareness range of an event, a phenomenon, a planet, perhaps a technology. One person may know about it, or 10 people, or a crew, or an entire city maybe knows, has a parasocial relationship with this phenomenon. A large corporation or worldwide awareness may exist. This is a scale. Present reality, all past realities, all future realities, and scale 36 of fame. All reality knows how cool you are. I suspect that these distances and ranges will come in handy more again later. Here we have benchmarks. Understanding the unfamiliar is easier when players have standards against which it can be compared. Rational constraints on accumulating fortunes, salaries, wages, and the cost of living, stocks and bonds, invested capital in relatively safe ventures produces a compounded annual return on investment of between 1 and 2%, calculated as 1.5% plus flux times 0.1% rolled at the end of the year. The benefit of a conservative investment is that its chance of loss is almost nil. So, if you take your starship, loot the Tomb of Horrors, sell your artifacts found therein, and invest the sum tidily in a relatively safe venture, your player character can expect between 1 and 2% return on that investment. However, there are more lucrative activities in which to engage in a tabletop role-playing game.